Quick welcome if you're new here. This is 5 random questions. If this episode makes you laugh, think, or say, oh, that's good, hit follow so you don't miss the next one. And maybe share it with a friend who'd enjoy it too.
But if people are attacking you and they start saying, oh, you're the other side then. No, I'm not. I'm just a realist. I can see things for what they truly are. And we all need to do that. We all need to hold people more, like the accountability is lost. It's completely lost now these days. And people just follow blindly. And that's the biggest issue.
Hi, and welcome to 5 Random Questions, the show with unexpected questions and unfiltered answers. I'm your host, Danny Brown, and each week I'll be asking my guests 5 questions created by a random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions are, and neither do I, which means this could go either way. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this week's episode. Today's guest is Rye Voss. Rye is the host of Codega's Codex of Curiosities, a podcast exploring high strangeness, ancient civilizations, hidden histories, and the spiritual forces that shape human experience. A researcher and storyteller by nature, Rye approaches fringe and controversial topics with curiosity, discernment, and a commitment to thoughtful conversation. He's a husband, father, and beekeeper who's returned to walking the path with Christ, grounding his work in faith while encouraging listeners to question narratives, think critically, and seek understanding for themselves. So Rye, welcome to 5 Random Questions.
Thank you so much for having me on, Danny. I'm really looking forward to this and to the unexpected questions that we'll be facing today.
You're very welcome. And your podcast, as I was explaining there in the intro, it's one of these that truly can have something for everyone because of the topics and niche involved. And as a history fan or a fan of history myself, I'm curious, one of the ones you mentioned, one of the topics is hidden histories. So I'm curious, is there a hidden history you've covered that really blew your mind when you were digging into it?
Well, I have guests on I let my guests do all that digging and I get to listen to it. But I would definitely have to say that the top 2 would be Atlantis and Antarctica, actually. And Antarctica comes up so often because of the elusiveness and the secrecy that surrounds it. And I'll go with Antarctica, actually, because the more and more I find out about it, the more interesting it gets, such as prior to World War II, the Nazis were investigating Antarctica and they conducted many missions there and they actually set up bases as well. Now, leaked information that was discovered was diving charts and instructions for submarines to enter below the ice and enter into what some might call inner Earth. Some people might say, oh, this is inner Earth, when in fact it's just finding, the best way to say it is bubbles under the ice, created by geothermal volcanoes that have created these large cavities under the ice. And the Nazis had found a way to enter into these. And we're talking very specific diving charts, like what degrees they need to go down when they come back up. It is really crazy that these types of things were discovered. And it's kind of like that's the type of information you don't really hear much about. And then you actually are presented with these documents that show it, and it blows your mind. Because when people hear inner Earth, they think of the movies, Journey to the Center of the Earth. Well, this could be considered that. Some people would consider that as inner Earth or center of the Earth, when it's fact you're just accessing a landmass that's just covered with ice, but you're just going through caves, is more or less through caves and rivers is what you're doing.
And I wonder because obviously the Nazis were very known for their interest in the occult, or Hitler's interest in the occult. I wonder if that was part of what they were looking for there, what secrets could they pull from, inner Earth.
Well, there's a lot of theories, and that's what those are, their speculation theories. And I love diving into them, but to find the actual truth behind it, that is a little more hidden as to what was there. Like, of course, there's rumors that there was crashed UFOs, there was an advanced civilization, and the advanced civilization, this is actually more of my belief, is that was a branch of Atlantis that was living in Antarctica in this inner Earth. If you look at the Roman Empire, it wasn't just in Rome. It wasn't just, in Italy. It expanded out completely So it wasn't like, oh, when you talk about the Roman Empire, you don't say it's just here. It expanded to these other satellites. So when you talk about Atlantis, it had expanded its reach much further out, including that there is strong evidence in Mexico, where I live here, of influence from Atlanteans. They talk about their historical ancestors coming from Atlas, which is at Atlantis. It's clear as day. When you go to some of these historical or these archaeological sites, there is places, there's like the House of the Atlantean, that literally says that. Why did that traverse across, the oceans to these locations that we would think wouldn't have any knowledge of it, but there is. So that's what I think actually Atlantis is a break-off civilization that survived cataclysmic events, and they were much more advanced than us.
No, it's fascinating, as you say, because of the underwater aspect.
Yeah.
The ability to travel further distances as opposed to trying to walk on land. Big difference. So, like I say, I love history, but I also love supernatural and unexplained, etc. So, I've got your podcast on my list for one to really binge on. I've got a few days off next week, so look out for Spikes from Ontario, Canada next week.
There we go.
There you go. And quickly, I'd also mentioned there you're a beekeeper.
Yes.
Now, is this beekeeper or is this Jason Statham type beekeeper and you're an ex-CIA operative that takes out the trash?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, it's literal beekeeper. I've always wanted to get involved with bees. When I was in Canada, I used to live in Canada as well. I always wanted to get involved with bees, but I never made that jump. I didn't have a place. And then, jump forward to now when my father-in-law has some land and definitely a spot to put some bees on. And a good friend of mine was raising bees, and I was like, "Oh, this looks awesome! I love this." And he kind of pushed me forward. He's like, "Well, let's go get you some bees. I know the guy who's selling them. He's selling them for real cheap. We'll go buy you some bees." And sure enough, I bought 2 colonies and put them on the property. And last year was my first year harvesting honey, so it was quite an experience. And you get to actually know your bees. It's strange. You feel the vibe, the vibration, and we always talk about. Everybody talks about everything's in vibrations and whatnot, but they truly do create vibrations with their when they're buzzing, and you can feel it, and you can feel when they're getting aggressive. You can feel when they're calm. There are many times when they're extremely calm, and I just hang out there and just watch them, and it's just amazing.
I can imagine. It's like you say, they've got their own little, patterns, vibration patterns, etc. So you can tell when Steve is getting a bit aggressive. You're going to pull him back and sort it out. So it sounds. I mean, I love the fact that you connect with nature that way. It's awesome. And bees are such a core part to human existence.
Yes,
which sometimes we forget. I feel so. It's great to see that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes,
you're very welcome. And one thing will also be great to see for sure, with such a tenuous link there to the next stage, is our random question generator. So, Rye, are you ready for me to bring up the generator and jump into your time in the hot seat?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Question number 1. What is one thing you would change about your home?
About my home, I would definitely say this house that I'm living in right now, I would love to have some green space. The house that we're living in, because like I said, we're living in Mexico. Sometimes it's not so common to have a yard, and the houses are always so tight. There's no room. So we don't have a yard. We have 3 stories, and no yard. And at first I was like, oh yeah, it's no problem, because I have my father-in-law's land that I can go to, but it's difficult just to get away. You'd rather just step outside, step into the yard, put your feet on the grass and just enjoy that. Also, it's very common here, if you do have a yard, to have a little like pool, swimming pool. We call them plunge pools because they're usually no circulation. You just kind of fill it up with water, maintain it with chlorine, and you vacuum out as necessary. And we had that another house that we lived at, and we sold that one. We wanted to be closer to my wife's family, and so now we are here, and there's no yard. So it's something that it's in essence, you're living in an apartment. Even though it's a house, it's kind of like an apartment, and it's just concrete, and it gets a little draining sometimes. We are putting in a lot more plants outside and inside, but that it's a little bit of a part for that to kind of try to offset that that deficit. But unfortunately, yeah, no yard, no green space.
Yeah, I know when, and we were talking in the green room before coming on, and I mentioned you used to be in Canada. I'm here in Canada, in Ontario. And we used to live in Toronto, well, close to Toronto. And it was like big cities, big, apartment blocks, etc.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we did really appreciate when we moved where we are now is yard, green space, trees, etc. Completely hear you on that. Is there an opportunity for you to? I know a lot of people, depending on ownership rights, etc., sometimes build yards on their roofs. If you've got a flat roof, for example, and put foliage and grass, etc., up there.
There is a possibility, but it can degrade the actual roof. Like we'd have to maybe engineer it, and it would be very difficult. Yes, we do have flat roof. We do have I won't say a large, but we have a large patio on the third floor. We have one room on the third floor and you can exit out, and then we have like a covered patio. But unfortunately, we barely ever use that area due to one of the main things is the sun here is so intense that it just makes it unbearable at times. At night, yes, it would be great. But again, we run into an issue. As I said, that the sun here is so unbearable. The sun will destroy anything that you put out there. So we don't have any furniture out there. It's so incredible how fast the sun will break down things. If you have like plastic chairs, everybody's like, oh, plastic will last a lifetime. Not here. It actually breaks down extremely fast. It becomes very brittle and it just destroys any type of fabric. It will destroy. Aluminum is okay if you put aluminum up here, but what kind of furniture are you making out of aluminum? So even if people are like, oh, why don't you put covers over? Okay. But then the covers will become disposables is in essence what you need to consider. So that is an issue. I really would like to maybe cover the patio more. It is covered, but it's kind of like a see-through covering. I'd like to extend it out further and then make it solid. So it's not, so the sunlight cannot come through, and maybe then it'll become much more usable.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I've only been to Mexico on vacation. I can imagine living there, how hot it could be, and the difficulties that can bring. When you're trying to plan for, as you say, yard space, foliage, furniture, anything. Any entertainment places, I guess.
Extremely. For instance, here we'll say the month of May is the hottest. It's going to be one of the hottest months that we will have. And just for example, the temperatures that we'll be hitting, if we take into account the humidex, it will be hitting above 50. On average, normal without the humidex, it'll be somewhere in the 40s, usually around 44 degrees Celsius. And I try as best as possible to not use the air conditioning here because it's too drastic of a change. You have the AC and then you go outside and it's just like, oh, I can't do this. Or certain areas of the house, you don't have AC because it's not central AC. It's just these mini splits that just do rooms. And then you exit and you're like, oh, I can't do this. So just to become more accustomed to it, we try not to use the AC as much. Though right now I have the AC on because I didn't want to have the fan blowing on me and disrupting the sound on here.
I appreciate you doing that. I could have fixed it in post, as we mentioned, as both podcasters, but I appreciate you doing that. Yeah, a parent with two kids who, when we moved here, were young kids, and then the pandemic hit, etc. It was nice to have some yardage to just let them play in the back and keep them active. So I hope you managed to get that for sure, and maybe we can bandy all our listeners together and send some worker bees over to help you get that set up for you. What we will do, though, is we will have a look at question number 2. Question number 2. What do you miss most about being a kid?
That's a great question. It's something that I think maybe some of us we don't think about. We kind of overlook that. But I would say maybe the lack of care and responsibilities. I would say the lack of care of what's going on further outside of your smaller world. We, as kids, it's like, what's for lunch? I'm going to go play with Bobby. I'm going to play with Joe. It's not what's happening in these other countries. What type of political discourse is happening over here? What type of issues are we having over here? You're not worrying about putting food on the table. You're not worrying about any of that. You're much more. It's much more simpler times, and you just want to hang out with your friends, and you don't care about. I mean this in a nice way. Like, you don't care about your friends or what they are per se. Like, you are friends because you guys get along and you have a good time. You're not saying, well, you're a Democrat or you're a Republican or you're a liberal and you're a conservative. I can't be friends with you or something like that. It's just like, oh, hey, do you got a bike? Yeah, I got a bike. Well, let's go to the park. And you go to the park and you play on the playground, and there's not this built, I don't know. I don't want to say prejudice, but sometimes there is these prejudices that slowly evolve with maybe different types of scenarios and different, the media is pushing you one way and pushing you this way. And it creates this division and this divisiveness between us all. But as a kid, and I'm talking about when I was a kid, because now I see a lot of children on cell phones and mobile devices. But when I was a kid, we didn't have any of that. It was call your friend on the phone, the landline, and hey, let's go to the park. Hey, you want to come over and let's play? Yes, let's do that. So I would say would be just the carefreeness that we had, just the lack of concern of, not, I want to say real world problems, but of adulting. It's just to be a kid and be carefree. And I make sure I try to do that with my daughter. I want her to not have the concerns that I have. I kind of want to shield her from any of these things that she should not be worrying about at this time. And it's just be a kid and enjoy those times, and don't worry about, like, I'm not letting her watch the news or anything like that. I will let her know if there's things that she needs to know. But other than that, just to have fun and just to not have this fear. Yeah, that would be it. Maybe these fear that is just not necessary for children.
No, I hear you on the I guess like the tech side. I love tech. I'm a nerd. I love geeky stuff, techy stuff.
Yeah.
But I also understand how that's changed children and how that's, very different. Like you, we didn't have phones. We had landlines, but that was it. You didn't have mobile phones. I think the earliest tech that I ever had was at a job. It was a pager. That shows you how old I am. So it's but yeah, trying to keep our kids, give them access to phones, but also warn them of the dangers of it, and then, like you say, protect them from what can be some very horrible things that go on in the world. It's always that. I've got 2 teens now, and it's always that sort of balancing act where you miss when they were younger. And to your point, Rye, just carefree. All they worried about was, okay, I'm on my bike, I'm going to go down to the beach, I'm going to meet my friends there, and we're going to, jump in the lake or whatever, And now it's less so. And I feel there's so much easier access now as well that can take away innocence and, drive certain narratives that can guide kids that might not have experience of what being shown that narrative to follow that narrative, whether it's right or wrong for them. And I kind of rambled there. I apologize, but
no worries.
It's a long-winded saying, a way of saying, yeah, I completely agree. And what do you feel is the best way that we can continue to, like you mentioned yourself for your daughter, there's ways that you can shield her, etc. Is that what we just all need to do, and then try our best to shield from the stuff that they don't need to access at the moment?
I think so, to a degree, because you don't want all of a sudden them to be just smacked on the side of the head with, hey, now this is what's going on. I think a gentle, like, as they grow older, slowly allow them in, but allow them a space to make up their own mind, and not to be, to make common sense choices, and not to be influenced by, and I'll say this over and over again, especially because of my podcast. I always I try to take everything with a grain of salt, especially with the media. And one thing I learned is, and I get into conspiracy things, but this is true, was something called Operation Mockingbird, where they infiltrated the media with CIA plants. And what they did is, it was so successful that they said they stopped doing it. It was so successful, we stopped doing it. So we have to be careful. And I say that when you're, and so this is what I'm getting the point to is when you're watching media, always say, whenever they give you a story, say, maybe. This is happening, maybe. This is happening, maybe. Don't take everything they say as truth. You should always do your own research. And that's what I want to instill in my daughter is, yeah, you'll hear these things. Like she does watch YouTube and she's like, oh, they said this and this. Okay, now go look further. Is that the truth? Or is that just being embellished? And or is that a flat out lie? And so it's very important to take your time when you're doing these kinds of things and just to, just approach things logically. And so like I was saying is I want my daughter to slowly be able to question things and look into things herself, but I don't want her to be just smacked over the head with it. It's kind of like, okay, it's time to introduce it a little bit more and a little bit more. And we have been. It's not like we shield her 100%. She doesn't know what's happening. It's like, okay, here we go. Here's a little bit more. This is what's going on. What do you feel about this? And then, you need to look into these things yourself. And that's what we do.
And I like the question of what do you feel about this? Because that's a great talking point, instigator for children that may not want to talk about it. There's less pressure when you mention it. What do you feel about it? Because now it's opening up their feelings and now we can talk about that. So I really like that. And obviously don't trust ChatGPT as your main source of, your main source of research and contact, etc.
Yep.
Because that's just driven by humans anyway. So it's all coming from the same place. But yeah, I like that. I like that. It's a nice sort of question. And I appreciate the answer for that. And it's time to appreciate question number 3. Okay, question 3. I feel this maybe kind of builds on the second question a little bit. Question number 3, Rye. What has been or what was the best moment of your life?
Ooh, this is a very tough question because there's a lot of moments. Probably one of the best moments was, and of course everybody says this but it was the birth of my daughter. It changed absolutely everything. And she became my greatest teacher, so to speak. It's I never knew how much I didn't know until you have a child. And so once you have a child or a child of your own, you realize you don't know squat. And no matter how much you try to prepare yourself, the moment until giving birth, like life did change when my wife was pregnant. Things did change. We know we're expecting, but once that baby comes, that's when everything changes. And it's like it's so anecdotal and it's so everybody says that. It's so it's just so common for people to say that, but it is absolutely true. My life changed completely. And I feel at some point I was, and I still fought some things. I still took time to learn, and some things I just wanted everything just to be normal and sane. I mean, and sane. But now it's kind of gone into insane sometimes. There's so many more things that you need to look into. And it's not just a quick search on Google. Okay, there's my answer. And I did that in the beginning. It's like, oh, okay, that's my answer. But you can't do that. You got to dive deeper in so many things. And that's what kind of started this journey as well. I've always questioned things, but it would be that I made some big mistakes in the beginning. And now I've really learned that I can't wing it. I got to really take my time. So that's the biggest thing. The most amazing thing in my life was my daughter. Still to this day, she still impresses me. Of course, sometimes she upsets me as well. But the stuff that she's able to do, and just the other day I was looking at her, I'm like, we made that, like we created this being, this life. It's just fascinating. And I would say my daughter.
Yeah. And as a fellow parent, I completely get where you're coming from. But that's the thing. Nobody tells you, there's not really a guidebook for becoming a dad or becoming a mom. There's obviously parents that have gone through all this before, but that's specific to their children and their experiences and them as a person, as a new parent. So I can remember just like you Googling crap out of things at 2 a.m. What does this mean? Do I have to go to the hospital? What's going on here? What's going on there? So how old's your daughter, if you don't mind me asking?
She is 10 years old.
Oh, good age. So what's been sort of, obviously you mentioned she still makes you, still impresses the heck out of you. Yeah. What's been your proudest moment from her growth in that 10-year period?
Well, she has joined, I would say actually my proudest moment is that she has joined a gymnastics club in trampoline. And right now she's like the number one in the state here. And she's competed nationally as well. And she's going to another state in a couple weeks here to compete again. That's not the nationals, but the nationals will be coming up, and she'll be competing nationally. And I after every time she competes, I almost like cry. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that's her. When you say trampoline, so you're like, oh, they just jumped around. No, it's very acrobatic. It's amazing. And she trains 2 to 3 hours Monday to Friday, and about 2.5 hours on Saturday as well. This is every week. So it's a big commitment. This is what she wanted to do. This was her choice. My wife wanted her to be in swimming, but she got bored of that. My wife was a swimmer as well, and my daughter got bored of that. She's like, and we put her into the summer camp where they had all these different activities. And the coach of the trampoline, she was too young at that time, but he's like, no, I think she'll be perfect, and brought her in, and sure enough, she's climbing up through the ranks. So I'm very, very proud of her and her dedication to this. It's amazing to see her do what she's able to do.
Our daughter's a competitive cheer athlete, so I know exactly what you mean when it comes to commitment, training,
yes.
The hard work that they put in. And it's not like one of the training things that our daughter does is tumbling, or power tumbling. And I thought, power tumbling, okay, that's roly-poly. You're just going to go on the ground and roll about. That's tumbling, right? Oh, heck no. It's like standing still, doing backflips and everything. It's crazy. So gymnastics, etc. Yeah, that's a lot of, commitment. And kudos to her for putting that effort in at such a young age as well, and knowing that's what she wants to do and go for it.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's, sometimes, of course, she's a kid, and sometimes she's like, I don't want to go. I just want to like watch YouTube or something like that. But no, she goes, and she developed some amazing relationships with the other girls, and it's really, really great to see.
Yeah, it's definitely a community. I was watching a video, a competition video the other night there, and the athletes, the girls that were on stage at the time doing the routine, the music cut out about 20 seconds in. And all of a sudden, you get about 10,000 other cheer girls from other teams in other states and other countries counting out the moves, because you go by moves, you go by 3, 5, 7, 9, and that's the beat that the girls all shout while they're doing their competition. Okay. So even though the competitors, they were there to support the girls that were having this issue on stage because their music cut out. So the community is amazing. Like you say, mate, it's just like, you make friends, and I feel that's probably friends you're going to have for life as well, or certainly a good chunk of your younger life as a growing girl into a young lady.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to. Well, I don't want to jump ahead with her, like I want to be like, oh, I'm looking forward to what happens, but it's like I really feel that it also, because she's growing up so fast. It's funny people say that, oh, the children grow up so fast. But it's like, oh my gosh, where did this time go? And I want to hold on and savor every moment and every up and down that she has, and just, try to log it in up here so I never forget.
Well, you never know. Maybe the girls, like our daughters, will be in the same competition in different events, etc. at some point, and we'll bump into each other and just meet in proper real life. So that's something to look forward to, or maybe not.
Definitely.
But yeah, so no, that's awesome. I really like that. And yeah, becoming a parent is amazing. This part is brought to you by someone awesome. We'll be back with more questions in a sec.
On the Bad Movies Worst Opinions podcast, we review popular movies from the 90s and 2000s just to see if they're as bad as you really remember. We believe that everybody has a favorite bad movie, those movies that you can't help but love even if the critics hate it. So we go back and watch them. Did these movies really deserve the hate, or have people been too harsh all along? Find out every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast from. Check out the Bad Movies Worst Opinions podcast.
Hey there, Danny here, with a very quick interruption. And I promise this is less awkward than it sounds. If you're enjoying 5 random questions and thinking, hey, this was worth at least the price of a coffee, well, you can actually tip the show. It helps keep the lights on, the questions weird, and the podcast proudly independent. Totally optional, no pressure, zero guilt, but hugely appreciated. Just head on over to 5randomquestions.com/support. And whether you donate or not, thanks for listening. And now, back to this week's episode. Let's have a look at what question number 4 is. Okay, question 4. Could go either way. Question 4, Rye. What are some things you shouldn't say at work?
Well, it depends on which work we're talking about. If we're talking about regular work, religion and politics kind of stays out. That's something that I don't, and current affairs of everything. But in my podcast, we talk about everything. We talk about politics. We talk about religion. We talk about current affairs, everything that is going on in this world. So technically, I try to cover everything when I'm podcasting. Another thing, so like you said, I do beekeeping, but another job that I also do is I'm an ESL tutor. So I tutor English as a second language, and I try to keep religion and politics out of it. But a lot of times my students are from around the world and their politics are different, and it just comes up naturally in these conversations. So myself, it all seems to come out. There's not really anything that I don't talk about. Maybe perhaps my own personal life. Like I try to keep that a little shielded, because I don't want people knowing everything that goes on in my life. So that would be it. I think would just be some personal parts of my life. But for most part, I tackle just about everything. Like I have a gentleman, he lives in Egypt. One of my students lives in Egypt, and he is part of the Arabic Union. So of all the Arabic other countries that get together. And so we talk politics every class. And, he talks about what's going on with Iran and Saudi Arabia. And it's quite enlightening to hear someone else's perspective, who is living there and they're experiencing everything right there. It's quite interesting, because he sees it from that point of view. He is Muslim, and he sees things from that point of view, but it's not any different than ours. It's kind of like, we don't like war. We don't like violence. Like, we don't like that the aggression is happening, but we also don't like what Iran was doing as well. It's very interesting. So they're condemning both sides, which myself, I agree with that. I'm like, yeah, this and this, like there's things that are happening. I don't agree with war at all. So back to the question, is there anything we shouldn't talk about at work? It's just your very personal life. That's about it. Everything else I think is fair game for me personally.
Well, it's funny you mentioned, like, not funny. I just mentioned no one likes war, but it's interesting you mentioned, the colleague there. Because I remember when the Arab Spring was happening, it was kind of, I guess, in the early days of social media as well, like the Arab Spring uprising. So you were seeing it live tweeted. That's when Twitter was massive and used for stuff like that. Not so much now, but at the time it was an incredible communication tool. For the this Arab uprising, the Spring uprising. I have to get the name correct. I apologize if I've got the name wrong. I will leave a link to the show in the show notes. But the same when Ukraine was, invaded, and you were having people live streaming on TikTok, and they were Ukrainian citizens basically sharing what was happening at the time, as a live invasion was taking place, and we weren't seeing that at that time in the West because, at this part of the world anyway, because it wasn't making its way out, of like TV wasn't covering, etc. So it's always, and this goes back to one of your earlier points, Rye, where maybe it is happening, maybe it's not. We need other perspectives and other, points of view to sort of counter and educate and, make us invest time in learning about it. It's funny how like religion and politics are always the two things, right? If you're at a family dinner, what should you not talk about? Religion and politics. If you're on a first date, what should you not talk about? Religion and politics. It's crazy how sometimes, something simple, like two words, can make for such a dividing, line between two people that otherwise would get on like a house on fire.
Yeah. It's so true. You can divide a house so quickly by bringing up. I would say politics is the number one right now, and then religion. It seems to come up a little bit later, but politics is the most volatile discussion rate at this point in time, and I think that's by design. It's by design to create this division between us all. And if we actually got together and instead of like arguing and actually had a conversation, we'd realize that there's a lot more bridges we have than chasms, or canyons. There is a lot more, and we're just told to. Many people are told to think one way, or to think that person's that and this person's that. But there's a lot more similarities that we have than we care to realize.
It reminds me of there's like a little meme that goes about saying, I'm just going to use like a liberal and conservative as an example. So a liberal music fan is listening to a band, loves it, and then someone comes in and says, "Oh, what are you listening to?" So they tell them, "Oh, didn't know you listened to that because the lead singer is a heavy conservative, for example, with views that are unlike your own." So immediately the person that was previously loving the music and enjoying it now doesn't want to listen to anything. Even though previous to that, it was enjoying it and everything was okay in the world. It just shows you, like you said, how it can flip so quickly, without any additional context.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If we just realize that we're all in the same boat. I personally, my personal belief about politics is, the left wing and right wing are both from the same bird. In essence, they're trying to accomplish a goal, but they're doing it in two different ways. And it depends on which way you like that goal. And I think that goal doesn't benefit us, the people, but it benefits the corporations and the politicians. And the left and the right are trying to accomplish it, and they will try to get you to follow them. And then, I think it's very important that we pay attention to everything. And it's okay, like, if you follow the left or if you follow the right, you need to criticize your own. It's if you're not able to, you're in a cult. I'm going to come out and say that. Like if you don't like Donald Trump, but you support or I don't know, we'll just say if you like the left, but the left is doing something bad, you should call them out on that one. Same for the right. If you support the right and they're doing something bad, you need to call them out. But if people are attacking you and they start saying, "Oh, you're the other side," then no, I'm not. I'm just a realist. I can see things for what they truly are, and we all need to do that. We all need to hold people more. Like, the accountability is lost. It's completely lost now these days, and people just follow blindly, and that's the biggest issue. Yeah.
Yep, again, 100% agree, mate. And I feel, to your point there, doing it internally, from your own side, that's where it needs to start, because, the other side is just going to, brush you off because you're from the other side, so to speak. But if you're complaining from the inside, then that's when change can start to happen. Hopefully, anyway. Hopefully. And speaking of change, we're doing really well here, Rye. It's time to change it up to your final question in the hot seat. So let's have a look at what question number 5 brings up. Yeah, I'm going to finish with this one. Question number 5, Rye. If you could be any age, what age would you pick?
Great question. I think if I could be any age, now would it be to do things over? I think I would love to be in my 20s again and do that over, because I was not paying attention to the world. I was paying attention to let's go party, let's go do this. And it was such a waste of a decade of my 20s. I thought was a huge waste. I feel that I could have made so many more changes, such like a bigger difference at that age if I only realized the potential that I have. And we don't realize the potential until we're much older. I'll be 50 this year, and I'm like, I have so many ideas. I have so many entrepreneurial ideas that I'm trying to get off. But I'm like, if I would have started that 30 years ago, where would I be now? Well, I don't know. But I would love to have this mindset that I have now back then. I could have done so much more, saved so much more money, done different things. I did go traveling the world. I did manage to save up money, and I traveled the world for a year on my own, went backpacking. And it was great. But as soon as I came back, I fell right back into that rut. And it was like, okay, let's go back out with our friends. And one thing I did notice is when I traveled the world for a year, I changed. And I changed a lot, a fair amount. And then when I came back, I noticed that everything was exactly the same. So maybe if I could go back and we'll say 22, be 22. And at that age, I would look at things differently and just, change my point of view on how I see things, change my life, and from there move forward, allow myself to be stronger in my own shoes. And by that, I mean, is not to be so persuaded by peers or outside influences, and to be okay that if I make a choice or something, I may be standing alone, but that's okay. I would love to have that when I was that much younger. And, where would I be now? I don't know. It would be quite interesting.
But I guess that does raise two kind of questions almost. Because it's like that old, time travel thing. If you go back in time, you change one thing, what does it mean 30 years down the line? So does it mean you're a completely different person than the one you are today?
That was, sorry to interrupt you. That no. That's always on my mind. And I was going to say that, like, if I change something then, I will not be who I am now. But yes, please keep going, Danny.
No. And that's the thing. I sometimes wonder if I take in, because I'm a big believer in like fate. Some things are fate and are meant to happen. So if my wife and I, for example, she's Canadian, I'm from the UK, and we would never have met had I not been online at a certain time on a music band's website in the community forum, leaving a review of Scottish punk. Had I not been doing that at that exact time, we would never have met. I would not be here in this place right now. So I'm always curious as to, it'd be awesome, like you say, to go back and do things properly, for want of a better word, that you didn't do at 22. But then what's the knock-on effect, and does that negate the things that happened since then compared to what may have happened had you done X when you were 22?
I completely agree. And to take it one step further, I have these, well, I'll tell you a little bit about, I have some very intense, crazy dreams. My dreams are very realistic, real life. There was one where I traveled back in time, and I traveled back and I had the opportunity to interact with myself at a much, much younger age. And I was going to warn myself about my ex-wife. And I was going to say, don't ever get involved. Stay away. That is damaging. But I realized, though, if I did that, it would, exactly like you say, it would cause this branch in this timeline. I would not have met my wife now. I would not have my daughter. Everything would change. So I backed off. Like, I can't interact with myself. I can't warn myself. I have to go through those trials and tribulations so that I can be who I am now. And it's true. It's a paradox. You've created this paradox, and it's like, I would not know or be who I am now if I didn't go through the things I did. Though I do look back and I'm like, oh man, that was such a waste, such a waste. I was more interested in partying and having a good time with my friends on the weekends. Working for the weekend is exactly what I was doing. It's, let's work hard, make some good money. And instead of like investing in gold or silver or stocks, it's like, let's invest in Goldschlager or something else, or what is that? Jose Cuervo silver. It's like, that's what I was investing in, that gold or silver, and not into the real thing.
It's like that saying, what is it? Youth is wasted on the young or something like that. I can't remember what the exact saying is.
Yeah.
But we've all been there. We all, make mistakes when we're younger, forge our past, and hopefully down the line we'll learn from it. You mentioned yourself, when you came back, you were changed, and your eyes were open to different experience and different cultures, etc. So without that, you wouldn't have had that ability to change and then realize, ooh, this place isn't changing. Maybe I need to do more stuff now that are different. So it's always that weird thing. Like, say, it's the whole Back to the Future, don't stamp on that beetle because, oh no, it's like that Simpsons episode, right? When they go back in time and just all kinds of craziness happens down the line. They have to keep going back to try fix it, and then they mess something else up, and it just never ending.
Yeah, once you change one thing, you create this ripple effect, and it gets bigger and bigger as it branches out.
Well, Rye, that's your time on the Random Hot Seat. Over. You've come through unscathed, I feel, hopefully unscathed, with some excellent questions and some even better answers. So I really, really appreciate that. As is only fair, I've had you on the hot seat for about 45 minutes now, maybe. It's now time to hand over the question asking baton to you, good sir.
All right. So being from my background, being from the show that I host, I definitely wanted to do something that, gets you thinking. So let me ask you this. Now, what if one of the major historical facts you've trusted your entire life, something taught in school and reinforced by the media, turned out to be completely fabricated? Not a minor error, but something big. Now, if you discovered a lie like that, would you dismiss it as an exception, or would it push you to start questioning everything you've been taught if it's true? Because if one major truth can be manufactured, doesn't that open the door to asking how much of our accepted history might need to be re-examined, and why the lie would be maintained in the first place?
Wow. So that's that's an outstanding question, first off. And as someone who loves history, it was one of my favorite subjects at school as well. Thank you for that. Double down.
Well, there we go.
Even better. Another reason for that question to be appreciated. I feel if there's like something that's such a key part of your growing up. So for me, I guess, even though I was there, but I wasn't there. So the moon landing, let's talk the moon landing, 1969. I was born in 68, so I was a little baby. I was alive at the time of this monstrous event. And obviously after that, as a young person watching on TV, I could watch some of the subsequent moon landings, discoveries, etc. That's been one of the ongoing things since the grainy footage came back to TV stations. Is that real? Is it not? Is that a studio in the back lot of Warner Brothers just, doing all this? And if so, why? Was it because of the space race and trying to get ahead of the Russians? And, all the reasons it could be from if it was fake kind of thing. And I think because that was such a massive cultural event that the whole world was basically following and watching it as it happened, and what it meant for space exploration after that, and funding going into space programs and then being pulled, etc., and all the stuff that came after that. If it turned out, or turns out, it could still be proven, maybe it was just a fabrication, but if it turned out that it was a lie for X reason, I feel you have to go down and follow the path and say, okay, well, why was this fabricated? It can't have just been to put Russia in its place, from the American space program point of view. Was there something else? Was there political reasons? Was there monetary, usually, reasons? There's always finances and money and someone benefiting involved. And start to go down, and then, how far down the rabbit hole do you go there? So I feel if it's something that's so key to your history, whatever that looks like, and it's a lie, I feel you owe it to yourself to dig and not accept the first or second or even third answer that's placed to you. Continue digging. Well, that doesn't make sense because this happened, so now I'm going to continue researching and digging, etc. So yeah, I would want to definitely dig in. Again, history. I'm I'm a big, not fan because that's the wrong word. A part of history that really fascinates me was the First World War and how it happened, and Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated. But was that actually the case, or was another reason? Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, there's so many that you could go, you could start to look into.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, the basic simple answer would be, yeah, if that was a big part of my life and what shaped my beliefs and interests, etc., turns out to be a lie, I really want to know A, why, and B, who was involved, and then go from there.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's very important for if you realize that you've been lied to on one thing, what's to say that it's not many other things? And even if it's, and let's go to an event. Let's just say it was the moon landing. If they lied on one thing that happened during that, I think you need to bring everything into the spotlight. Like perhaps there was a picture that you can prove was false. but everything else is real. Well, no, now we need to question everything. So I think it's very important, and that's what I implore to everybody that listens to my show is just question everything. It's okay to ask questions. If it's unscientific to tell people, no, you can't question things, because that's what science is about. Science is always about questioning and asking questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, whether it be for your own well-being, for your own health, for your own safety, or just for your own curiosity.
Well, I've got a show called 5 Random Questions, so of course I agree with that. But no, I 100% agree, and I feel we owe it to ourselves just to grow as people and continue growing as people, always ask. And that is a perfect segue for letting listeners where they can listen to your awesome podcast, which I mentioned. I will be catching up on big style next week. I've got it lined up for binging. But where can listeners, where's the best place to start to check out some episodes, connect with you online, even YouTube, all the good places that they can find you in your podcast?
For sure. I really appreciate that too. And again, Danny, thank you for having me on. So if people are looking for my show, of course, it can be found on every platform. The most common places, of course, is YouTube and Spotify. But I'm on Apple, I'm on Podbean, I'm on Rumble. I have accounts on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok as well. And if people want to reach out to me, you can contact it. You can leave me a message. I try to answer every single one of my messages on my videos. Specifically, I will answer all the questions on Spotify, as I've had some videos kind of go viral on YouTube. So they kind of get away from you when you're like thousands of comments. You're like, okay, I'm not going to be able to answer all those ones. But on the smaller videos, if you've noticed that one doesn't have as many views, I definitely 100% answer every single question. If you have an experience yourself, or if you're like a researcher or you have questions, by all means. And I'm open to any type of discourse, as long as it's coming from a place of respect. I've had some people who are just plain out rude, and it's like, no, I don't have to give you my time.
Exactly. Nobody got time for that. But we will definitely give you time on the episode show notes, and I will link out to all the apps and all the places that you can be found. So whatever podcast app you're listening to this episode on, or if you're listening to it on the website, just check out the episode show notes as usual, and all the links to the good stuff will be there. So again, Rye, thank you for appearing on today's 5 Random Questions.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to 5 Random Questions. And if this was your first time here, feel free to hit follow and check out past episodes. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on the app you're currently listening on, and if you know someone else that would enjoy the show, be sure to send them this way. It's very much appreciated. Until the next time, keep asking those questions.